Hey, how's it going, guys? My name is Jesse and welcome back to my channel, Movies Reviewed. Today's review will be on Child's Play 2019, which I have to say was better than I thought it would be. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe, and with that being said, let's get started. I have to say that I'm not going to just compare this movie to its original. It's a reboot. It's not trying to be the same as the original movie. I will be reviewing this movie as its own movie and on its own merits, although there may be some similarities. As far as expectations go, I really didn't have any. To be honest, I think I remember seeing one trailer and I wasn't really interested in seeing the movie. I didn't like how they were going to make him a self-aware AI killer robot, and I thought they were trying to force the modern angle a little bit too much. I thought it wouldn't be as creepy as the original where Chucky's a possessed doll, and it would kind of take away from the fear factor. Basically, I didn't have high hopes for this movie, but I ended up enjoying it way more than I thought I would. So there were a couple things that I didn't like, but they're a little nitpicky. I do think that having Chucky be created by a disgruntled Vietnamese factory worker instead of being a possessed doll does take away from the fear factor a little bit. Personally, it didn't bother me that much, and depending on how attached you are to the original, it might bother you more. Also, the movie was a little cheesy and a little predictable, as most horror movies are, but it didn't really take away from the film as a whole. There were also a couple of dumb horror movie decisions, but that's kind of to be expected from almost all horror movies nowadays. This movie isn't meant to be a Conjuring or Insidious type of scary movie. It's more a thriller slasher, and that's kind of to be expected from a Chucky movie. The Chucky doll itself does have a weird face. I mean, just look at this thing. It's weird, and it's just, I didn't like it. But after a while, I did get used to it a little bit, and it didn't bother me as much. Although, it was noticeable when I first saw it. There was also this kid named Pug, and apparently he was supposed to be the comedic relief, but really, personally, I just found him really annoying in that kind of like, just shut up already kind of way. Some people might like him, but personally, I didn't. There was a part relatively early in the film where Chucky learns how to stab from the main kid, Andy, after Andy takes his big knife after he was done cutting his sandwich and stabs it into the cutting board. You know how you do after you're done cutting your sandwich and you just... The main kid, Andy, has this line at the beginning of the kind of final battle, and you can tell he's really acting his heart out, and the line is supposed to be a good line, but it just falls so flat, and it really made me cringe, and I felt bad for the kid because it could have been so much better, and he was really trying. Also in that final battle, this guy had his throat slit, sort of, and all this blood comes pouring and gushing out, and he falls over, and it's pretty obvious that he's dead. Instead of staying dead though, he comes back at the end and saves the day, but earlier you clearly see all this blood coming out of his neck, and it's just, it didn't make sense how he could have survived that. This pretty much sums up all the bad stuff. It was a little nitpicky, but these moments and these things kind of stood out enough to notice it, but not enough to bring down the movie as a whole. I think the bottom line of a thriller slasher movie is to keep the audience on the edge of their seats and keep them engaged, and this movie did a really good job at that. There never really was a dull moment, like I was engaged and I was watching the entire time. I felt the suspense when the movie was being suspenseful, and I laughed when the movie was being funny. And let me say, I laughed way more than I thought I would with this movie. Like, this movie was actually kind of funny, and I did not expect that at all, and it was a very welcome surprise. There were a couple of bloody and gory deaths, and there were enough, but personally I would have wanted a little more, but I was okay with it. But these scenes were really bloody, and that also surprised me, and it is rated R, so it definitely took advantage of the R rating. I know not everyone is a fan of blood and gore, but personally I am, and I think it did a great job of using that to its advantage. If you don't like blood and gore, then you might not like it as much, but for me, it definitely improved the movie. I was also very impressed with the acting in this movie, but especially Gabriel Bateman, who plays Andy. Usually, I'm not a fan of kid actors, and the other kid actors in this movie were alright, not the best, but the kid Andy did a really good job. This kid definitely stood out from all the other kids. All his emotions were real, and you could kind of feel what he was expressing. This movie also did a good job at character development. I was actually surprised that I was attached to these characters, and kind of sad when some of them died. Spoiler, I guess. They did a good job of building the relationships between these characters, and especially Andy and his mom, played by Aubrey Plaza. Their relationship was pretty real, and I bought into it. They definitely seemed like mother and son. Also, the relationship between the detective and his mom, who lived down the hall from Andy, was very believable. The other kids in this movie were kind of just really cliche. Like, you had the bully and the comedic relief, like I mentioned before, and they just kind of were bland. They didn't really have any character development, and they were kind of one-dimensional throughout the movie. I think the biggest surprise of this movie, however, was the growth of Chucky. You see Chucky kind of grow into this murderous doll instead of just him starting off evil right off the bat. And although they do some things with his programming in the beginning of the film, he doesn't instantly act evil. Like, he's actually nice to Andy and nice to people, and he kind of turns evil throughout the movie. I think this was a great idea, and you kind of get to see Chucky grow a little bit, and it kind of builds a stronger connection with Chucky, who's a murderous doll, and that's kind of not expected, and I think they did a good job of that. Towards the beginning, Chucky actually does violent things, but he's doing them to protect or to help Andy. So he's not just this one-dimensional murderer, but he's kind of doing bad things for the right reasons. I mean, yeah, eventually he does just start brutally murdering people, but it's kind of nice to see that change in him. I definitely liked how they showed that gradual change, and at one point I was even feeling sorry for Chucky, which I did not expect, but I was actually okay with it. As far as the technology angle on Chucky, I did not mind as much as I thought it would. And it was kind of cool to see him interact with the technology, and it was a little more creative than just having him stab people. It was a little more grounded than a possessed doll, and that kind of took away from the fear a little bit, and it was less threatening, but I still enjoyed it. This movie was engaging, funny, suspenseful, and bloody, and I really liked it. I think all these elements worked really well together to create one good slasher movie. If you're looking for a super scary, demonic horror movie that has you seeing ghosts in every dark corner of your room, this is not that movie. If you're looking for a fun and entertaining slasher movie, then this is definitely your movie. I decided to change my scoring guidelines from see it ASAP, see it if you want, and don't bother, to great, good, alright, and just bad. So I'm gonna give this movie a score of good. It was fun and it was entertaining, and I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. Anyways, that's gonna do it for my Child's Play 2019 review. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.